Welcome to Conscious Dominance, a DSRX studio production. These weekly conversations explore how to approach mindful leadership and inner dominance within the powerful container of committed, intentional relationships. Join Eric as he invites new dialogues, sharing practical insights for how the craft of consciousness opens the aperture to love, serve, and connect with unwavering presence.
Hello, Andrew.
Eric, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. We have 6 pillars of conscious dominance, and I thought we'd jump into the last 3 of them. We last week spoke about the first 3, and they, to me, had a feeling of action. And these 3, to me, feel a bit more, on first glance, as more passive or more yin or more still. There's a stillness even in the words. And so I thought we would look at these 3 together and see how they relate to each other and also see how they compare and contrast with the first 3. And I feel like they're interesting to kind of think of as a grouping because I think they're very related to each other. And they are presence, sensitivity, and regeneration. And I found it really helpful when I separated the first 3 out and started thinking of them in relationship with each other. And I found that conversation to be really fruitful in seeing how when you take action, are you doing it from a place of integrity? Are you doing it from a place of non-reactivity? Are you doing it from a place where you feel like you're taking responsibility and accountability for all of what you are? And so these 3 also include those 3. So when we speak about presence, we've already assumed that you're doing those 3. When you speak about sensitivity, you already assume that you're doing those 3. So this, I think, precludes the sensitivity. This is not a reactive sensitivity. This is a different word. And you were wonderful at really bringing that concept to me. And I found that to be really helpful. So I'm curious with these 3, what comes to mind when you hear them, and would love to hear your thoughts.
This is the inner dominance, part of dominance, right? The ability to stay present with reality. I love that Byron Katie quote. I think I've probably referenced on this podcast before that when you fight life, you lose. Or when you fight reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. So to me, inner dominance is really the ability to be present with reality, to be able to be with what is rather than be in disapproval or resistance to what is. And so that's presence. Sensitivity then is the ability to actually feel and receive all of reality, like to be okay with reality and in acceptance of reality to the extent that you don't need reality to be different, you to be okay. And that's really what all of these 3 get back to is, can I just be me? Just be the okay version of me, the totality of who I am, and not need what is actually real, the things that are not inside of my control anyway, not need them to be different for me to feel okay. Can I actually be okay regardless of circumstance?
Correct. And I feel like, to me, they're so related to the non-reactive part of from the first, because to me, the result of not being reactive, I think often if we're not being reactive, if we didn't include presence and sensitivity, an easy way to be not reactive is to close your heart off, to just close part of your feeling world off. There's a certain stoicism, a blockage that on surface allows you to be not reactive. So the real challenge to me is, how do you feel everything, be sensitive, and still be not reactive.
Well, and not go cold,
Correct.
right? This is the duality that I think a lot of times guys get stuck in, is this: I either have to close myself off and go cold and shut down, triggered, I'm going to be defensive, I'm going to get hurt, like women are
Mhm.
going to be verbally abusive to me, like all of these assumptions that those are the only two options. It's either open and hurt, or
Mhm.
closed and safe, but then cold.
Mhm.
And this is kind of a third way. The third way being, you can be open and be warm. You can stay warm, you can stay inviting and really welcoming to your woman and to everybody and to the whole world around you. You can be both open and warm. Being non-reactive doesn't have to mean shutting down. It can really mean acceptance.
And I think that word presence is whenever I am around Rachel and I really tap into and I'm able to be present with her,
Mhm.
everything's downstream of that. When I'm able to be in a place of open heart, warmth, pure presence, everything is possible when I'm in that space that we're talking about. And to me, it's very similar to being in appreciation. I feel like part of it is if what's happening is a feeling in it where you're sitting there, you're in awe or you're in reverence to what's in front of you and what's occurring. And that frequency or that feeling of the person feeling you, feeling them, a phrase that you've spoken about, is really powerful. And I think females especially feel you feeling them and love that. And it's not necessary for us to even do anything.
Yeah. And this also is a place from which doing can come.
Mm.
I know this is kind of these presence, more yin based kind of pillars are really about being able to be still, to your
Mhm.
ability to be receptive and to be kind of in the moment. But that then becomes the place from which you can take action from a more grounded, conscious, solid, healthy place.
Mm.
Because if the place from which you're taking action is a resistance to reality, if you're in your head kind of trying to think your way into a safer space for yourself, and then
Mhm.
you're taking action from that place, then the actions you take are going to be more defensive. They're going to be more ungrounded. They're going to be more unsettling to her and more unsettled in yourself. That just kind of tension breeds more tension. So this is about a relaxation so that you can act, lead, dominate, fuck, whatever it is, from a place of stillness, right? Where you don't have to run away into your head. You don't have to run away into your fantasies. You don't have to try to get somewhere, but you can really penetrate the moment.
Said, to me, the word that comes to mind is there's a fertility in it. There's a space of a possibility and potential that's there that it's like where you're able to adjust, pivot, give whatever's necessary in the moment, like you were saying. And I think for the person that's with you, it feels spontaneous and it feels alive and it feels fresh. And it doesn't feel like something that's been, you're just going along with the old patterns.
Yeah.
And I think females love, all people, all of us love to be around presence, around something that feels alive, it feels fresh. It's like what makes a comedian amazing is to be able, it feels like spontaneous, like it just occurred, or wit, or
I,
even, go ahead.
I love that example of a comedian because the comedians that always impress me the most are the ones who do crowd work,
Right.
because they are not going up on stage usually with a bunch of prepped, rehearsed jokes.
Right.
They're going up on stage really engaging with the audience and with what they're hearing, what's being said to them, kind of what they're feeling in the way that people interact with them and the questions they ask. And it's so spontaneous, and it requires so much presence, so much depth to be, not only to engage that way live, right?
Mhm.
Talk about vulnerable. You're on stage in front of probably hundreds of people,
Mhm.
and you don't know what someone's going to say, and what your whole act, you're getting paid to be funny in response to whatever comes at you. Like,
Mhm.
that requires such deep presence.
Yeah, it's a great example. And I feel like you brought up the word vulnerable. And I feel like sensitivity isn't really sensitivity unless there's a vulnerability with it. Like what's being asked of you in this is to open yourself up to feelings and to into a potential that could go wrong, a potential that you're not in control of. And I feel like this is when it feels really fertile, is that there's a space of possibility. And it could go this way, which is completely not the way you want to go, or it could go in a way that feels alive, fresh, and holding that other person and yourself. And you have to risk that moment where it's not necessarily premeditated or you're in control of everything.
Because the reality is there's a lot of life we're not in control of.
Right.
And this is where I think the crux for a lot of men that I work with really comes into play, is the attraction to dominance, the desire for dominance. In a lot of cases is the desire to try to have control over a life in which he feels out of control. That's what it was for me at the beginning.
Right.
Like, I want to have some control in my relationships so that I can feel like I'm not out of control.
Hmm.
And that's where I think a lot of frustration for men comes in, is, oh shit, like I can't actually control how my woman feels. I can't actually control life and what happens in life. And my message to guys in that is, it's not about trying to control what you don't like. You'll never get there, because life is going to life. Life is going to do what life does, and the world is going to do what the world does.
Hmm.
Dominance is the ability to be present with what is, so that rather than interacting with the moment in disapproval, meaning this is happening, it's raining outside and I don't like that it's raining outside. And so now I have to figure out how to deal with the fact that I don't like that it's raining.
Hmm.
Out of my control, I need to figure out how to deal with it, how to basically how to survive in spite of the fact that I disapprove of the moment,
Hmm.
versus accepting, appreciating, maybe even enjoying the uncertainty and not trying to
Hmm.
control what you can't control, but then maybe even having fun, like playfully engaging with the moment and leading forward from the truth. This requires like getting all the way back down out of your head, out of your disapproval, out of your triggers, out of your, like, all of your bullshit, and being able to be like, this is good. Whatever this moment is okay. Because now I can put my arm around it and I can lead forward out of this current truth, rather than trying to act to get away from this current truth.
Right. I like what you just said. It makes me think of something that I brought up here before, but I think it's worth mentioning. There's a wonderful book. It's called From Good to Great, about businesses that
Mhm.
move from good to great that have been studied. And one of the examples when they talk about this, that all these businesses have, is something called the Stockdale paradox, which is that during the Vietnam War, there was Stockdale, a man who went on to be an admiral. He was a prisoner of war. And what he found was that people that were overly pessimistic did not last and did not do fare well in the prisoner of war camps. And those that were overly optimistic did not fare well either, as they would gain a sense of hope that would constantly be tarnished. And what was necessary was to face the brutal facts, the reality of where they were, and yet remain optimistic. And it's something that I think about a lot. Any challenge that I might have is face the reality of it, be present with that reality, and then find a way to be optimistic in that, find a way to be hopeful in that, find a way to move us forward. Because if you're facing the reality and you're not able to be optimistic with it, that's not a leader. That's a death march. That's you're taking yourself somewhere. That's what existentialism, that's what nihilism is. This is what a belief system that says that there is no future. A woman or anyone doesn't want to be with someone or may want to be with them from a place of their own sort of existential nihilism. But if you want a life that is fertile, that has a sense of possibility and potential and life force and chi and all the things that like make us feel alive and vital, we need to be able to face reality as it is and then have a sense of optimism of our capacity to move forward into a better place, and not from a naive place, but from a place of a deep seated knowing. And I think often that comes from experience of being able to have persevered and come through challenging situations in the past. It gives an inborn confidence in those moments.
It reminds me of Russell Wilson, the NFL
Right.
quarterback, and Trevor Moawad, who was his kind of mental coach, who passed away, I think, in a year or two ago now. But the approach they developed, they called neutral thinking, right? It's, if you're behind by 20 points in the fourth quarter and you want to come back and win that game, you can't score 20 points right now. You can only score maybe 7
Mhm.
and you can't score 7 points in every play. So you have to get back to neutral thinking. It is what it is. I am where I am. This is what it is. And now I have to go take action. You've got to get grounded in the moment, just like you're talking about with the Stockdale paradox, right? It's coming to just pure presence and acceptance of the facts. In a masculine expression, if we want to be in a dominant frame in our lives, is to be the action taker, because the submissive woman who is our counterpart, she is the present moment expression.
Mhm.
She's the one who is receiving and then feeling in the present moment. She needs us to be the one moving forward. She needs us to be the one taking action, because initiative is the realm of the masculine. It is not like the feminine. A woman who's in a feminine expression isn't going to be taking initiative in any part of her life where she's the initiatrix. I don't know how you would say that, but that is a place where she is in a masculine expression. And in our relationship and in the way that I lead in these dom sub dynamics is, in every way possible, I want Dawn to be in the reactive frame, in the present moment. She's here. She's with me wherever I'm taking her. So I'm the initiator and she is the present moment feeler, because then she's reflecting back to me the truth of where it is I've led her. And that is how I see and gauge the rightness of where I'm going and where I've gone.
I think it's also necessary. That's why that sensitivity for us to be feeling her feeling the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost like a gauge on the car where you can look and see, okay, we're gonna go this way or this way. And then you don't judge it, but that's part of reality as well. Her experience in that moment is also another thing for us to be able to observe, feel, and not let it rock us. And that's often sometimes one of the more challenging things is she has a disproportionate response or any kind of response that's counter to maybe what we had intended. Are we able to be cool in that and just be present with that?
Right, because that's where we get to learn from. we can't learn from her. We can't really listen to her when we aren't present. We can't, we're in a place of defensiveness or disapproval of reality. Our sensitivity is worthless to us. All it's doing is tuning us into where we're looking for, where we're getting hurt, which is just our ego. So our sensitivity is still there. It's just showing up in the reticular activating system way of, you'll always find what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is evidence that women are going to hurt you, guess what? You're going to find it everywhere. But when you can slow down and be with with what is and be okay with what is, now your sensitivity can let you actually listen to her. And not just her words, but listen to, when I say listen, to really be attentive and attuned to her. I have a great example of this. I want to hear what you had to say, but I have a great example of this that from our life very recently that I would love to share.
Share yours.
So I mentioned right before we started recording, for anybody who's maybe new here, Dawn and I live full-time in an RV, and we travel around the country, and that's our life, our living setup. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can look in the background and see that I'm inside of an RV right now. RV life, we have decent size RV that we live in, but there's only 2 rooms. There's this room, and then there's the bedroom. I guess there's a bathroom too. And I do, all of my work is done on camera or on audio, basically, or writing. When I'm on camera, I either have to be on camera sitting in my bed, or if I'm out here where I am right now, then Dawn is sitting in the bed right now reading. Or outside if it's nice enough, but it's 40-something degrees right now, so she's laying in bed. So we started looking at new RVs because we wanted something that had an extra little space where I could set up and have an office. And when we started looking at them online, looking at them in person, what I did was, of course I was paying attention to what I liked, what I enjoyed. I'm not going to buy something that I don't like. But I also know that Dawn's attunement to and the way she feels in different spaces is really valuable information. So when we would go look at them, I would listen in this way that I'm talking about, this deeper listening that's not just about what is she saying that she likes or doesn't like, but look at the brightness in her eyes. Like, is she lit up and kind of excited and she's really feeling good? Or is she, like, is her energy a little dampened? Like, some of them we walked through kind of just they felt cheap. They felt kind of yucky. And she just didn't feel good in those spaces. So you can tune into how she's feeling and information towards not only, this isn't just about pleasing her, right? Giving her what makes her happy. It's also the fact that a woman has their sensitivity more to physical spaces, physical reality, where our sensitivity is more towards emotional reality. So we use both of our natural strengths by her being just open to experience what she experiences when we're looking at something like buying a new camper to live in, which is basically for us, it's buying a new house because we live in this thing all year round. I put her in the space and then I listen to her, feel her. And then I am the one who has to take the combination of that information plus the finances, plus the, what do I like, and find the best answer overall. But how she feels in the space is a really important piece of information, not only because of her liking it or not liking it, but because of what she might be able, like, she'll sense things like, if there's going to be problems with a certain camper or car or in a physical location, like the tents, and she'll feel these things. So when we can listen to that and take that as information and put it to use as a part of our decision-making process, we make better decisions. We can lead better, but we have to be able to be present with that. Because if she's, I really don't like I don't feel good in this one, or I just tell it she's really resistant to it and I really like it, I'm like, but I want it. And, I can
Right.
start throwing a temper tantrum
Right.
when if I had listened to her, I might make a better decision. So I have to be
Right.
able to be out of my selfishness in a way to be able to hear her and know if I'm making the best decision I can.
Well said. I think that goes into, I think about that with restaurants too, and where we sit in a restaurant or what it experiences with another person. I feel like our women are incredible sensitivity barometers of what are feeling into things that we are not immediately seeing. I think that brings up another part of this for me, and is that the word sensitivity also to me implies being aware of things unseen. And I think sometimes the emotional realm and the feeling realm, because we can't always see it, but we can feel it in another person, is also part of what is a gateway to things that we might call more mystical places, but places that we can't explain with our logic brain.
Mhm.
And serendipity, or when you just happen upon something, or you're paying attention and it's something, kind of these patterns that are going to be repeated. That's also to me part of sensitivity, is being open to the potential and possibility of life when that is beyond our rational mind that we can even hold to be what is possible. And I think that's the power of when you stop controlling things and you get into a place where you begin to allow life to have its own presence. You then open up the possibility of things that are way beyond and way better than something that you could premeditate or that you could plan. And there begins to be a collaboration with life. And I've experienced that quite a number of times. And to me, that's where I become something that's beyond just like a Dom or a conscious Dom or something like that, but rather I become almost like a host of just fucking awesome life. Like something happening that's just, there's a sparkle to it, there's an awe to it. There's a Japanese word that says sugoi, which means, wow, that's awesome. And those experiences that are sugoi, like they are not something that we can always do ourselves. And they almost feel, like the best orgasms are like that, where you're not trying to make it happen. You're just creating a fertile ground for which her to do her expression and her place and for that to be possible. And I think that's a lot of what it can happen when we're in presence and we're in sensitivity. And it also, that word fertility brings us to the last word. It's a part of this, which we haven't talked about as much, but we have been talking about it this whole time, which is regeneration or rebirth. But it's really truly the sense that from a place of where you could falter or something seems like a mistake or something seems like a death or something's off, can we pivot and turn it into something that's really awesome? And I think that's what it is to be in that space of potentiality. It's like what maybe you made a wrong turn somewhere or someone made a mistake with something that you asked them to do. Can we, in the moment, pivot and take that and turn it into something really awesome? Or if we lost money in something, can we not? Oh, this gives us an opportunity to turn our attention towards something else that maybe needs that. And so that we are committed to being in this place always, that things are good and that things can move towards potential life.
That word good reminds me of something that Jocko Willink said on his podcast one time, where he's talking about how his men would come to him and say, I know what you're going to say. You're just going to say good, right? Whatever happens, good, good, because then we can do this instead, right?
Right.
I think he says, we didn't get the gear we wanted. Good. We can keep it simple. Didn't get promoted. Good. We can focus on our current mission. Good. Just if you can just approach life like that, like, good.
Right.
Whatever. Maybe it's not what I wanted, but okay, good. How's that good? Let's figure out how it's good. And you've heard me say it before, like, how is this somehow benefiting my evolution? Life didn't happen how I wanted life to happen.
Mhm.
But if I can be present with it, then I can regenerate. I can create something better out of the lessons that I've learned and the truth of where I am.
Mhm.
And the necessity around this, the ability to do this, yes, you've got to get out of your head. Yes, you've got to be able to be present. You've got to be able to kind of come to a place of non-reactivity, all of these things. But the thing that I think is so important is, how do we start? Like, how does a guy actually get from where he is from 0 to 1?
Mhm.
For me, that always comes back to, can I be in my body?
Mm.
If you want to regenerate, if you want to be able to be present, if you want to be able to be non-reactive, if you want to be able to start tapping into your sensitivity, if you want to start, like, all of the stuff that we talk about here, what can you actually do? Get in your body.
That reminds me of that McConaughey and Wolf of Wall Street. Where it's like, oh, you know that scene.
I always tell guys, feel your ass right now.
Right.
Actually wiggle it in the chair that you're sitting in. Feel it. Okay.
Right.
Whenever you feel yourself kind of getting tense, or your thoughts start
Right.
spinning, or you get anxious, or you get nervous, or you are like you're just like, I can hate this, or I don't like when she's acting like this, or I don't. Rather than resisting that or focusing out there, bring your focus back into your own body. Get back into here. Take a deep breath. One great way to do this, hold your breath and count to 10. Or jump in a cold shower. Tarzan yourself a little bit, beat yourself in the chest a little bit, or, do something to reconnect to your physical body. Because
Mhm.
when you start connecting to out there,
Mhm.
now you're going to be in a place of reactivity. You can't do anything helpful. You can't do any of the stuff we're talking about when you're
Mhm.
outside of yourself. You have to be in yourself.
Move your body.
Yeah, be in your body. Get connected to your physical body. This is where breath work comes in. This is where cold plunges come in. This is where exercise comes in. There's nothing
Breathing.
for me, there's nothing like the breathing exercise of doing some really intense interval training. That's one of my favorite ways to do this, is find a rower, go do some sprints, do something where you push yourself to the edge of your capacity,
Mhm.
and then guess where you're going to be? You're in your fucking body. Get in your body and grounded back in there. Now you can maybe have a little more sober look at reality rather than a reactive look.
100%. And start feeling it. One of the things that you've spoken well about is the energy. Is it coming up from your head or up here? Or is it coming down from your cock? Is it coming down lower from a lower place in this lower energy? And part of the challenge for men, I think, to go down into your cock is that you literally have to go through your heart. You have to go through your sensitivity, right? You can't close off to go through your stomach where we hold a lot of tension. You have to go through all these places that hold tension, and you have to feel it all. You have to feel the discomfort of feeling whatever you're feeling, and then be able to hold yourself in that so you can hold another. And I think about one of the things that so often men are addicted to harmony. We're addicted to things going well. We're addicted to money. We're addicted to prettiness or things being beautiful or getting attention. Or we have our addictions of our vices, of our phones, of our work. And all of these things are really trying to keep us from feeling things that baseline frequency of what it is when you just are there alone. And you've spoken well about just what it is to be alone and be in your shit and be in your stew. And to me, the only way for us to move through the pain and through whatever it is that we're not wanting to feel is to feel it. Is you got to feel it to heal it. You've got to go through and feel those things on your own, away from your woman, your core insecurities, my core part of me feeling so worthless, or whatever it is that I feel. How much can I feel and not collapse? How much can I just go there and feel it and sit with myself in those feelings and kind of separate? And one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to see that I am a we, that there are multiple parts of me. There's a little boy in me. There's a little sensitive part of me. There's parts of me that are really strong. There's parts of me that almost stand apart from all of me. There's my ego. And can I get along with all of them and all of them have a voice? And then ultimately be able to kind of stand apart from all of it and not be identified with any one of it and not let fear or these, not to ignore sensitive the parts that are really challenging and to feel the full feelings of it. So you're not shutting them up and integrating all of that and then being able to move forward. And when we're really able to do, that's when we're able to then stand in front of our woman or stand in front of life and whatever comes our way, it's like we've already felt it. We already know what that is. We already know what it feels like to feel like absolute shit and feel worthless and feel like hell. And then we're not as fragile. We're not as fragile in those moments. And it's really in those moments that can we not collapse? When someone's calling us out or someone's like trying to get our gird, there's been times with Rachel where I've had people that have come up to me or said things and tried to spark a fight or spark a little reactivity. And I've just been really steady and calm as a cucumber. And then they've gone on to someone else who's going to play their game. And that capacity to do that is really that's what's comforting to your woman. It's not your capacity to just be reactive and be in a space that's trying to perform strength. It's can we be strength? Can we be a frequency that's still, that's non-reactive, that has a steadiness and a calmness to ourselves? It's not a performance of it, but it is coming from somewhere that's in our body and all the way through. That's when it's really powerful. And I feel that's where it becomes presence and sensitivity and becomes a regenerative power. Because in those moments, we can then generate something new. She has a new opinion of you. She has a new feeling of you. You could literally transform a lifetime for her in one moment of presence and stillness and non-reactivity. Everything can change. And I think that's the great power of what we're speaking about, is that there's the potential to shift patterns when we have come across a very stressful, challenging moment and we rise to the occasion. People around us, especially our woman, will change her whole perspective of you, of life in general in those moments. It can be very transformative, very healing. And that's a kind of taking the word regenerative to a whole nother level.
Yeah. I love everything that you shared there, because the reality of all of this is that our goal is to live a good life.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of this, like all this work we can do, and we can almost get lost in it sometimes, right? There's this word, and how do I do this? And am I doing this? Am I doing enough of that? Am I doing too much of that? We can get too attached to these concepts. The point of the concepts themselves is to help us live a good life,
Mm-hmm.
right? The goal of all of this shit isn't to do all of this shit. The goal of all of this stuff that we talk about is so that we can really move beyond it and just go have fun, to just go enjoy our life. That's the point of life, to the extent that I can tell, is to figure out who you really are and then go be that. It's not to do all this work. The work is just the process of connecting to that. And you were kind of talking about all the parts, right? There's this part, there's that part, there's this part, there's that part. The goal in all of this, and I think regeneration hits this point very well, is to keep bringing all of those pieces of myself back home.
Mhm. Yes.
Like integration of
Right.
myself, so that because there really aren't parts of me.
Mhm. Right.
There are no
That's a
parts. There are no parts of me. There isn't like the little boy part and the traumatized part and the happy part and the angry part. Like there's not the good part. Like, people do this to themselves all the time. This is the good part of me. These are the bad parts of me. There's just you.
Mhm.
There isn't a bad part. There isn't a good part. There is just the truth of who you are. Into all of you into acceptance, where it's not like I have to step outside of myself. And this is even the point of the Buddhist concept of the witness consciousness, right? The seat of consciousness behind the external expression. To me, the point of connecting to that witness consciousness, or to that inner, deeper self, is to bring the outer self into alignment with the inner self, so that we can just live from that place of deeper consciousness in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life.
Mm.
Our whole journey of life is reclaiming these parts of ourselves that we have judged and shamed and stuck aside and told ourselves were bad. There are no bad parts. There's just a judgment of it. So how can we
Mhm.
reclaim these things, bring them back home? Because I have one consciousness, I have one body, I have one life, and I get one chance to bring all of this into congruence and into alignment in my inner and outer life, to have that kind of integrity to my soul,
Mm.
and I get about 80, 90 years to try to do it. And that's the point of being alive, as far as I can tell, is to do that so that I can just enjoy what it is to be me.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that goes along with what you're saying there is take accountability and the integrity of feeling whole, of the integral of integrating all of us, bringing that back. And I think this is where there's almost a cycle where you can have these moments of sensitivity and of presence and of feeling something, and maybe a trigger or something. And this is also saying that, it might not always work. And that's also part of regeneration. Sometimes we can be realizing that we've collapsed, or we've been reactive, or we haven't been acting in integrity. And then we're able, though, to come back home to these values and then readjust, grow, learn, self reflect, and then regenerate back into a new atmosphere and a new altitude and a new place. And I think sometimes there's seasons in our life, whether it's an injury or, some mental issues where we're reflecting or kind of stuck in some trauma loops or whatever, where we might be a while where it might feel where we're taking steps backwards, or it's a winter or something like that. And I think it's important for people to realize that, I know from experience, that this is not necessarily the end, and that this is often a opportunity to up level to good. You have a deeper experience and a deeper resonance with life. And it often gives us the capacity to have more compassion for other people and more compassion for ourselves, which allows us to even deepen our sensitivity to the life and be able to be even more anti-fragile, because we're able to hold all these frequencies and feelings without collapsing.
I think it's an important point or note on that exact topic to remember that in the study of polarity, and I'm specifically talking about inner polarity here for men, that we are already always infinitely receptive
Mhm.
to emotional energy, to feminine expression, and not just to your woman, but to all of the expressions of the feminine: money, nature, beauty. Like, we're infinitely able to be with all of what the world has to offer us, all of the chaos of the world. Every one of us is born with an infinite capacity for this.
Mm-hmm.
And when it feels like you can't handle life, when it feels like you can't handle her, when it feels like the chaos of your life is too much, this is where I think a lot of guys really start to spiral into some pretty dark places. I just can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Reality, the truth is, every one of us was born completely able to handle all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just some part of you that is still a part that hasn't been integrated back into that truth.
Yeah.
And every single time in my life that something tragic, something shitty, something terrible, something painful has happened, something good has come out of it. This is what regeneration is all about. It's about letting things die that need to die, because you cannot have something better come up in its place until the thing that needs to die, meaning the thing that needs to go away, the thing that no longer has a place in your life, the thing that doesn't fit into your integrity or fit with your values or fit with your integrated identity.
Mm-hmm.
I said this in one of the recent podcasts that Don and I did together on our other Dom Sub Devotion podcast, that if you look at my life now, and we're recording this at the end of January in 2025. If you look at my life now compared to my life 10 years ago, she is about the only constant, the only thing that's still left.
Mm-hmm.
My job, my business, the reputation that I had, the home that I lived in, like every piece of physical, like, personal property. There's nothing in my life that existed in my life 10 years ago. It all had away in the pursuit of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And, people look at my life now and they're like, you get to travel full time. You have a submissive wife who wears a collar and does whatever you tell her to do. My life is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love my fucking life. And the reason that it is so awesome and that I love it so much is that everything that I thought that I needed, everything that I had, everything that I did, everything I thought that I was, is all gone. The things I never could have imagined losing or letting go of, it's all gone. None of it still exists.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ground from which this awesome life that I get to live was born.
Right. Yeah. So you can't take everything with you, nor do you want to. Things have to be let go. Things have to be sacrificed. There is a death process, and being alive to that is the regeneration. I mean, that regenerative farming is the whole idea that you're going to be able to do farming with death as a part of the cycle, and not to be so afraid of the decay and of the rot and of the natural cycles of life. And I feel like that's a really important message that you're an example of and that you're bringing forth.
Right, because I see this a lot when people come to me looking for one-on-one coaching, or looking at joining one of our programs or something that we do through Infinite Devotion. Is basically the question I get pretty frequently boils itself down to, how do I have everything that you have without changing anything about my life? I don't, like, there are all of these things that I'm not willing to question my relationship to or how I go about them in my day-to-day life. So I won't question or consider changing anything, but I want everything about my life to look more like yours. And I just, chuckle internally. Whatever matters most to you is what's going to get the priority. And if what matters the most is staying the same and not letting go and holding on to and keeping a grasp on your current reality, then a new one has no space to come into your life.
Well said. And I think that a big part of this is there is a journey. This is not something that you get to just be all of a sudden. Like, there is a process to it. And that process must include a resensitization of our feelings, of our traumas, of our pains, of where we are, because all of that's part of the reality that we started this entire podcast speaking about. If we ignore our internal reality and our past and everything, then we, in some ways, are still being a victim of it because we are saying we can't go there. We're afraid to go there. We don't want to touch it. We're going to keep it in a nice little box.
And then
And I
it's
think
completely in control of us.
it is. And I'm not saying to be a victim of it either. It's not one or the other. It's not open that up and then say, oh, I can't go live life. No, it's like you can live and have everything you want. But if you are keeping all of those sensitivities and feelings at bay, sooner or later, they're going to come to haunt you. And you don't realize, and I, in the past, didn't realize that I was doing a lot of things out of an avoidance of feeling things.
Destructive patterns that I had in my life that did all kinds of damage in my life. It didn't come from just me being a man or dumb or icky and sensitivity, right? Men are sensitive beings, period. Because we are so sensitive, we are easily hurt. And because we're easily hurt emotionally, specifically, we have high walls around our hearts. And those high walls we have around our hearts, they keep us from what it is that we need the most. And that is people want the magic bullet. The magic bullet is self-acceptance. The magic bullet is presence. The magic bullet is getting back into your body, tuning back into that sensitivity and bringing some acceptance to reality.
And then we're not dependent on external circumstances to be a certain way in order for us to feel at peace or at ease. And that's when you really are able to be a pure in freedom and in what we might call, an inner dominance, that we're not needing our woman to be a certain way. We're not even needing her. And that's when you truly have her power.
Right. Because when you don't need her, when you aren't using her to fulfill some unmet need in yourself, then you can really want her. You can really actually choose her because you just purely desire her. You've chosen her. You want her. And she can feel chosen and wanted and desired instead of used and needed.
Yes, a different frequency. And to me, it's more of a feeling of cultivating. Can I be in a cultivation of my desires and my feelings and my wants, and allowing them to be just that and not always have to see them fulfilled? There's a frequency of just enjoying the pleasure. It's like the pleasure of looking at nature. You don't need to own nature. You don't need to own the sunset. You don't need to you can just be in awe of that and receive that. And I think that there's that kind of space where we can become witness to it all and great satisfaction from that, going back to that awe feeling that I was speaking of.
Just experience life rather than trying to do life or get life right. You just go be with the moments and experience it. Life is meant to be experienced, not figured out. It's not a formula. It's an experience.
Right. Andrew, I think this could bring us full circle, and I think this is a good place to stop. And I appreciate you. And I think there's no better way to end this than in just what that last thing you said about experiencing life and not needing it to be something other than just the experience of it. So,
and that's what I would encourage anyone who's made it all the way through this whole episode. Now turn it off and go look at the stars or play with your dog or give someone a hug and just enjoy being alive. That's the whole fucking point.
Breathe.
Yeah. Have fun.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Till next time. Thank you.
See you next time.
All right.